Welcome to the Art of Procurement podcast. My name is Philip Ideson, a 20-year procurement practitioner, former head of procurement and advisor to procurement leaders around the world. I started Art of Procurement to help leaders and their teams access the resources they need to increase their impact through insight-driven procurement. You are listening to our flagship podcast where we pull back the curtain and shine a light on the strategies, tactics and tools that leading procurement teams are using to align their impact with the needs of their business. This week, I wanted to take the chance to catch up with you one-on-one. It's something we used to do a lot more on the pod, but we've been so busy creating content this year that I really haven't had the opportunity to do so. Now, firstly, and most importantly, I hope that you and your family are keeping safe. My family and I have certainly been trying. We're currently living just outside of Orlando in Florida, which, as we record this, has seen some pretty significant spikes in COVID due to the Delta variant, but we're doing everything we can to stay safe while getting out and enjoying the summer as much as we can. Now, in the pod, I thought I would just reflect on the year to date, both from a procurement perspective and from an AOP perspective, and then talk a little bit about what are we working on at Procurement for the rest of the year. For procurement, it's been interesting because COVID created this sudden need for all the things that procurement professionals do best, essentially securing supply and managing cost. The challenge, therefore, having played such an important role for our organizations over the last 12 to 18 months, is how to keep, and regular listeners will know I don't necessarily like the term, but I think it still speaks to the challenge, how to keep that seat at the table. What we're hearing, right now, from all the CPOs and executives and providers that we speak to on a daily basis. So we're hearing that there's many supply markets that are still in a state of flux, whether that's inflation pressures, categories of low demand where we're expecting them to ramp up really quickly, like travel and meetings and events. A lot of creaking supply chains that are really at their limits. And because of all these things, these still necessitate on a category by category basis an ongoing high presence for procurement within the organization. We're also seeing an increase in demand for procurement talent. I spoke to a recruiter in the procurement space last week who really, his company are at the busiest that they've ever been. It's a really constrained market, at least here in the US, for talent, both from a direct hire perspective and through consulting firms. Now, we're also hearing increasingly that the balanced scorecard of objectives is growing, which is a great thing. A little less every year pressure on cost savings and a little more on all the other things that we can do, all the other value levers that procurement can pull. And that's not surprising. It's something that we've been seeing for the last few years, really since I started the Art of Procurement. But it's nice to see that on a year-on-year basis, the scale is slightly tipping. So I think at the top of that list, or certainly very high on the list, on an ongoing basis, so if we take away kind of risk being important because of securing supply right now, is ESG, environmental, social governance. I'm expecting those issues to become even more important once the biggest impacts of the pandemic subside. A lot of businesses don't really know where to start when it comes to that, and therefore they're going to look to procurement, or there's going to be that kind of vacuum in the organization where procurement can step up proactively to help our organizations think about that as it relates to the products and the services that we buy from our providers. Finally, there's a lot of money, an awful lot of money continuing to flow into procurement technology. That's coming from investor groups. Predominantly, you're seeing it through the explosion of startups. You're seeing it through continued M&A in the procurement space, and I think that's only going to continue. It's interesting, you got a lot of providers who have been around a few years and who are now getting bought, or there's a lot of M&A activity in that space, or private equity investors coming in. And then there's this emergence of a whole new class of providers in the procurement space, some of which doing things that some of the existing providers do, but perhaps with a different take or a different industry focus, a different user interface. And some are doing things that have just been age-old challenges for procurement. I'm thinking specifically in the data space of examples there. So you got all this money coming into procurement, and that we're certainly seeing no slowdown in that. So putting that all together, this year to date and reflecting on the year to date, honestly, I think that the pandemic for procurement, this may be a controversial statement, I'm not sure, but I don't think it was a net positive for procurement, and I don't think it was a net negative for procurement. The fact is that there are some teams who will build on this increased profile, and there are some that are not going to. And our job at Art of Procurement, honestly, is really to help the procurement teams, help procurement generally, help you as a procurement professional or leader, make sure that you become or retain that strategic importance to your organization through the end of the pandemic. So what about Art of Procurement? So we were fortunate to be able to get the team together at a recent offsite in Boston, probably a month or two ago, and we mapped out the next 18 months. One, I think it's great to be able to talk about having a team at Art of Procurement. It's the entrepreneurial roller coaster, so to speak, for when we started 5 years ago. As we've had a lot of ups and downs, we've shared a lot of those with you in the community, but we've had a really strong and a positive year this year, which is really allowing us to build out the team, to be able to bring lots and lots of new content and ideas and just other products to help you really execute on what is our vision and our evolving vision, which is to democratize, or really to simplify access to the insights, to the resources, and to the expertise that you as a procurement leader needs to have a direct impact on the heart of your business. Regular listeners will know that we do that really through three different areas. We do it through content. So this podcast, our webinars, events, and partnerships. We're building more partnerships with data companies, like our recently announced collaboration with Procurement IQ. We do it through our AOP Mastermind community, where we provide learning workshops, category briefings, and a library of procurement how-tos. And then we do it through our consulting, whether it's a consulting work that my team and I do directly, helping organizations assess their current capabilities, their teams, mapping out their improvement journeys and their transformation journeys, or by helping procurement leaders through category-specific subject matter expertise within our Experts on Demand network. So those are kind of the three areas that we work on every single day at Art of Procurement to help deliver on that vision to simplify access to those insights, resources, and expertise that you need to elevate the impact of procurement. Now, let's talk a little bit about content. Since we started Art of Procurement almost 6 years ago, we calculated that across our podcasts, our webinars, virtual events, through the long-form writing that we do, we've shared, and our guests, the executives, practitioners, academics, folks from outside of procurement, shared over 3.2 million words of wisdom. That's kind of crazy as we sat back and thought about that. There's so much insight within those 3.2 million words that we really want to be able to make that more accessible to everybody. Now, as we think about content, we think about content through three lenses. This is how we challenge ourselves. One, does the content meet the high standards that we set for ourselves? We're aiming here to create niche content that's really valuable and actionable for a specific intended audience. Now, we don't create content for the sake of page views or to fill up social media streams or to get the maximum number of downloads to a podcast. We create content that we think and hope will be really valuable for a certain segment of our community, with that aimed at different segments of the community with each piece of content that we create. So across everything that we do, there is something that will be helpful, that will be action-oriented for you. And it may not be everything, but part of what we do. There'll be something that comes along that's really impactful for you. We think about how can we make that content more accessible. Podcasting, where so much of that content sits, and what you're listening to do is a passive medium. Listeners can engage with content while multitasking. So you right now might be exercising or commuting or doing chores. But with less than 1 in 4 listening to podcasts each week out there in the procurement community, there's definitely a large number of folks who don't benefit from the insights within the podcast. So we want to look at how can we make that content into more bite-sized pieces that can be easily consumed as really one of our key strategies for the rest of the year. And then third, how can we make the content, I talked about it being actionable, and that's really always our goal, is how can we make the content at Art of Procurement more actionable? That's not to say that we don't think the content today is actionable, but we're always kind of putting that hat on, is how can you take this and use it and actually do something with it? We have a saying in our meetings, content without action is no more than entertainment. I say that because you can be listening to a podcast, and I know this because I listen to a lot of podcasts. You listen to something while you're driving the car and you think, this is really insightful and I've got to remember to do these things. But when the podcast ends and the next podcast starts, it's sometimes hard to remember those kind of insights that you listen to be able to put into action. So we're working on how can we do that? How can we help you take action on those things that you hear when you're driving the car and you listen to the podcast? We do that for today in some of our how-to libraries within the premium area of AOP Mastermind. But the focus there is on ensuring that the learnings from our podcast translate into the actions, despite the fact that it's consumed passively. So those are some of our focuses around content. And we have made a couple of changes recently to that end. So first of all, if you've been to the Art of Procurement website over the last 2 or 3 weeks, you'll have seen that we reoriented the homepage to really be the curation center of all the content. So we hope that by doing that, we've made it much easier for you to find the content that is going to help you on your own journey. There's a section that has been on the website for a long time, which is all the different kind of categories of content. So if you're looking specifically for category management related content, you can just go to the menu bar there and you can find all the category management related content that we have in that place. But going to the homepage, it was often difficult to find, especially our written content. So everything right there is now on the homepage. So please do check that out. Secondly, we're digging into this treasure trove of content that I talked about and the content of some of our partners to bring you a daily piece of insight or inspiration. Now, this is a big commitment and a big build out for us to be able to do so. And we want to make sure that content, it goes back to making the content accessible, but also actionable. So we want that content to be action oriented and enable you to either have that insight or get some tips on how to put it into practice as quickly as possible. So there'll be some long posts, but a lot of that content is going to be short form content. We're a couple of weeks into these daily posts, so I definitely encourage you to check them out. You can find them all just by going to the homepage, artofprocurement.com. We're also going to be listing in our weekly newsletters all those different articles. So if you're not able to go daily to the site to see the latest article, please do check out the newsletter. And there's plenty of, if you're not on that newsletter, you can go to artofprocurement.com/subscribe, or just go to the homepage and there are a few different places on that homepage where you can sign up to receive those newsletters. And they will list all the different content that we publish each week. Finally, just to wrap up today, I want to just tell you what's coming over the next couple of months, and that's really related to webinars and events. We've got a full slate of events that are coming, which we're just really excited to continue to share with you. Tomorrow, which is August 24th, it's tomorrow if you're listening to this pod on the day that it's published, we're hosting our first ever Category Palooza event. It's a play on Lollapalooza, the festival in Chicago that happens over the summer. We wanted this to think of this as a summer festival of insights. And it's insights to help you develop your 2022 category strategies. This time around tomorrow, again, if you're listening to this on the day of publication, there's going to be a lot of focus on getting the supply market insights that you need. How do you go and find them? How do you manage complexity in your category strategies? And a number of other sessions. So I would highly encourage you to check that out. Or if it's after the 24th of August when you're listening to it, just keep an eye on the website for ways that you're able to view that and watch that content again. We have a couple of webinars in September coming up. The first one is on September the 7th. It's called Taking a Bold and Focused Approach to Transforming Indirect P2P at Clorox. So that's going to be with Kathy Thrasher of the Clorox company and Mike Caldron of WNS Denali, taking us through Clorox's journey to, Clorox had a challenge where they really didn't have any POs. They weren't working on POs. So there's a lot of work for them to do in the middle of a pandemic when they're, one of those companies during the pandemic that was a critical company to, certainly here in the US, for helping people get wipes to sanitize through the summer last year. They went through this whole transformation during the middle of that. So lots of insights that Kathy is going to be sharing and Mike will share as well. And the second AOP Live webinar in September will be on September the 28th. That is creating tail spend ROI through an improved buyer experience. And for that, we're going to be joined by John Baptiste Ann from Amazon Business and from Vishal Patel from iValuer. Details of how to register for both of those sessions, you'll find those on the homepage again, artofprocurement.com. And then coming up in October is Mastermind Live Fall. So that's our flagship virtual event. It's going to be back on October the 25th and 26th. So I'd highly encourage you to save the date in your calendars for that one. At this event, we're going to focus on creating and building and maintaining close alignment with your stakeholders. It's not about saying yes to everything, which I think close collaboration with stakeholders can often be misconstrued as, but it's going to be about helping them elevate their impact while maintaining that tension that's sometimes required to have healthy debates about strategic decisions. So that's, again, Mastermind Live Fall. That's going to be on October the 25th and 26th. As for the podcast itself, we're going to be continuing with the same mix of content that we've been going with this year. We've got lots of interviews lined up for the rest of the year. We'll also be publishing the audio from a number of the events that take place because, again, that focus is making these insights as accessible, making ideas, experiences as accessible as possible. And the podcast is just a great way for us to do that. So that's really what I wanted to share with you this week. Like I say, given that we're here in the middle of August, I thought it was a good time just to reconnect, to share some of the things that we're working on here at Art of Procurement. I want to thank you for continuing to support us. We are so grateful for that. We have listeners all around the world, and it's just amazing to see that the stories, the insights, the experiences, and everything that we share just has such a great impact on the profession, and we'll continue to do that. That motivates us. And, you know, somebody posted in a LinkedIn post last week asking what the weekend meant and getting to work on Monday. Truly, we all love Monday here at the Art of Procurement because it means that we get to continue to work on all the things that we're working on to, again, help kind of execute on that vision of simplifying access to all the insights, the resources and expertise that you need. So with that being said, as always, I hope that you stay safe, and we'll be back next Monday, 6 a.m. US Eastern Time. Take care, everybody. I want to thank you for listening into today's episode of The Art of Procurement. To go deeper, including access to transcripts and actionable outtakes from the podcast, join the free level of our AOP Mastermind community. To learn more, go to artofprocurement.com/mastermind. And to find our entire back catalogue of almost 400 episodes, go to artofprocurement.com/podcast.